Alone in the Dark is a survival horror game from the far-off year of 1992. One of the first of its kind, and as far as I know, it's the first one in general to do the 3D character models over flat backgrounds. It served as an inspiration for other games, such as the original Resident Evil, and because there's a new, reimagined version coming out soon, I figured I would give the original a shot. And can I just preface this video real quick to say that if you're a fan of the original Resident Evil or other games of that style, do yourself a favor and buy this game. It goes on sale on an almost constant basis, and even when it's not, it's fairly cheap. It's an important part of the history of survival horror games, and I'm glad it's available on PC still so that some newer audiences can enjoy it. For those that want a more in-depth look, though, stay along, because I will be talking about Alone in the Dark. When you start the game, the very first thing you'll get is to pick your character. No opening narration, no cutscenes, just the basic character select screen. Emily Hartwood runs slightly faster but has less reach, meaning that avoiding enemies will be faster, but any melee combat will require her to get closer. Edward Carnby moves slower, but he has better reach, so melee combat plays out easier. Edward is also able to throw better kicks than Emily, I'm presuming because of her skirt. Personally, I think this makes Edward the better protagonist by far, because combat is easier and you can cheese some rooms by just positioning yourself just right and kick things to death. But narratively, though, I would personally pick Emily. Both Edward and Emily have their own reasons for visiting the manor, and both of them are linked to the death of Jeremy Hartwood. Yeah, the guy's last name is Hartwood. He's Emily's uncle, and she heads to the manor after receiving news of his suicide. Edward, on the other hand, is simply a private investigator who gets sent to investigate the manor and just goes along with it. Apparently he likes spooky things. Neither of these are bad stories necessarily, and they even have fully voiced narration for both characters explaining these points in depth. But I think that Emily's story would carry more emotional weight and narrative. Once you pick your character, though, the game begins with a cutscene showing your character, whoever you pick, arrive at the manor and make their way to the attic. We get our first jump scare in the form of this frog. I don't know why. I really like the frog. I'm just pointing this out to you. And then an actually cool shot of a creature watching us through the window on the inside. I actually really like when games with fixed camera angles get creative and do stuff like this, and I wish we got more of it in the franchise. Once in the attic, you're on your own. There are no hints or anything of the sort. So I hope that you remember what the opening narration said that you were on your way for. From this point forward, you will begin the standard survival horror formula of gathering notes to uncover the lore of the game, solving puzzles to unlock new areas and items, and avoiding enemies to conserve health and ammo. The attic is also one of my favorite starting rooms, and survival horror in general, simply because of how the game works here. You see, there are a couple of items to gather within the room, but lingering in the room for too long causes enemies to spawn. The first enemy to spawn will jump through the window to try and attack you. Since this is the first room in the game and you lack any sort of weaponry, you'll be forced to either run, fight with punches and kicks, or technically you could get the rifle, which is located in this room, but do you really want to waste ammo this early in the game? Because that can come back to bite you later. However, the game allows you to use your brain and block the window by pushing a cabinet in front of it, preventing the enemy from being able to break through. And this sort of strategy works for the second enemy as well, a ghoul that can spawn through a trapdoor in the floor. Push an object over the door, like this chest, and now the ghoul won't be able to enter. I really like that the game did this because it enabled combat to feel like a mini puzzle in its own right, and several rooms in the game allow you to abuse this by closing doors, pushing stools, or otherwise making it harder for enemies to reach you, and I appreciate that type of thinking. A lot of survival horror games kind of rely on making the player character weak or stupid or unable to use melee attacks. So being able to do all of these things and, use lateral thinking of using chairs as cover or blocking windows really just goes the extra mile to feel real and give a layer of depth to the combat that a lot of survival horror games don't do. Going back to the game though, you'll make your way downstairs and pass through some rooms until you encounter this room, where night gaunts will block your paths on both ways, and we will have to get through. They don't move or attack until you attack first, but they are also immune to all damage. The only way to defeat them is to place 2 mirrors on each side of the stairwell here, which will cause them to freak out and then vanish into thin air. And this brings us to the next point of the game. Basically, every boss fight is a puzzle of some sort. There's only one traditional boss fight, and even then you have to use a specific type of weapon to harm them, so it's still kind of a gimmick fight. And honestly, for as much as this is a survival horror game, it is also a puzzle game, so I'm okay with this. Moving onwards past the night gaunts, we will arrive at the main floor of the manor, where we will spend most of our time, even if there are a couple doors that are locked at the moment. There's a suit of armor that will come to life if you touch it, so don't do that. And now that we've opened the house up, it's time to go exploring. Exploring these rooms, you might start to notice that this game doesn't really have cutscenes, or NPCs, or really anything of a traditional story that you would expect to have in this sort of game. All you are doing is solving puzzles and trying to not get your knees bitten off by zombie chicken monsters, so what gives? Well, it turns out the story of the game is told entirely through books and journals that you will find lying around. It's a bit unconventional, but they aren't the only game to do this. One of the first journals that you'll find will be Jeremy Hartwood's journal dealing with what he appears to be going through before his untimely death. He appears to be going insane and dealing with the occult. And considering that we've been attacked by several ghouls by this point, I want to say it's safe that the Shadow Man isn't his sleep paralysis demon going haywire, but is actually real and we'll probably have to deal with it eventually. I like the idea that the stuff in the manor has been going on for years and that we're just another stepping stone in the long history of everything going on here, but I am also a bit disappointed in the lack of an actual story. Imagine if you played Resident Evil and there were no cutscenes or character interactions at all. You just start the game, read about all the experiments, and then fight the tyrant at the end. I doubt the game would have gotten as popular as the final product that we ended up with, and it's something I hope that the reimagining for Alone in the Dark fixes when it comes out later this year. After reading the journal, another monster will move through the window, so treat it like you normally do and move on. In the bathroom next door, you'll find a purple blob monster living in the bathroom. He can't chase you, but he can stretch his neck out to bite you. So if you need a water pitcher or the healing flask inside, just run in, grab them, and run back out. Just make sure to throw the healing flask away after you use it, because if you have an inventory limit, and the empty flask is completely useless. Keep exploring rooms and collecting items, and eventually you'll encounter your next enemy type. The ghosts. Ghosts are ghosts. Not much to really explain here, and they tend to just do their own thing unless you touch them. They will just leave you alone. This one here, just walk past it and collect the gramophone, and it won't move at all. It just sits there. Honestly, kind of relatable. If I was a ghost and I've been haunting a place for, decades now, I'd probably just be bored and sit there too. And after a little bit more exploring, you should loop back around to the main hall from earlier. If you found the very heavy statuette in the dark room, you can throw it in the suit of armor to destroy it, and you can recover the sword that it held. Keep on moving, and you'll find a way to the kitchen, where you can pick up a few things. You can find some stuff to snack on to heal up, a knife, the revolver, and most importantly, the oil can. Fill your water container from the bucket next room and pick up the soup from the corner of the room. The soup is inedible because it contains human remains, but hold on to it. If you use the soup while in the dining room, it will pacify all the ghouls in the room, saving you the much needed time, ammo, and health that you would have lost trying to fight all of them. Walking into the smoking room, a sentient pack of cigars or a haunted pack of cigars, one or the other, will start trying to kill you. The secret here is to pour water on the cigars, which will then kill them and allow you to explore the room freely. Although you technically could just sprint through the room if you wanted to risk it. Heading out of that room to the other side of the house, and you will find the only true boss fight in the game, a pirate. Depending on what books you've read and what rooms you've explored by this point, you may be wondering, why is there a pirate here? Well, one of the problems with the game telling a story exclusively through journals and books is that something like this will stick out, because there's nothing in the game otherwise that explains why. I'll explain why later, since he's important near the end of the game, but for now the important part is beating him. He can only be harmed by a sword, of which you have two to pick from: the old cavalry saber, or the sword used by the possessed armor. The cavalry saber breaks after a few uses, so that's why I pointed out how to obtain the knight's sword earlier. It has infinite durability, so it's the far safer option. Fight him off using a combination of the various sword attacks, and then upon his defeat he'll drop the key to the dance hall, which is the room right next to you. However, we can't actually do anything in this room without the right record to play on the gramophone, and depending on the order that you visit the rooms, you probably don't have it. So just ignore the ghosts for now, because playing the wrong record does nothing, and touching the ghosts will make them angry and they will immediately try to kill you. Walk yourself around the manor again until you find a room filled with paintings. Two of the paintings in this room will try to kill you by throwing axes and shooting arrows at you. Avoiding these is a pain, and I personally recommend at least attempting to stop them. Put the old Indian cover over the painting that throws axes, and it will stop. Now you're free to try your best to shoot the second painting with a bow and arrow. It's really difficult to aim, but if you do it, he'll kind of poof like all the regular enemies do. Otherwise, it is technically possible to avoid them, but trying to avoid both at the same time is difficult. So at the very least, I recommend stopping the one that throws axes. Defeating them will make the hallway safe to explore, so you can just admire the paintings, or just not have to worry about running away everywhere. So go to the room in the corner, and we'll find Jeremy's bedroom, where you can find a false book and the key to Jeremy's study. And if there's a false book, then reasonably one can assume there's a place to put it, right? And yes, that is correct. We head off to the library, where, upon lighting the lantern, we'll see the next boss, the Vagabond. You cannot harm the Vagabond with regular weaponry. You need to use a specific dagger matching the one described within a manuscript hidden in the next room. Run past the Vagabond and open the secret passage, where we'll see a room filled with occult objects and text. Take the correct dagger to kill the Vagabond, and now you're free to explore the library at your leisure. There are many books here that serve to expand the story of the game, but there are also two that will harm you, by either causing you to go insane, or will just straight up kill you. So be careful. After you are done exploring, pick the ritual talisman and head back to the smoking room. In the smoking room, and using the key to Jeremy's study, we can finally begin the final stretch of the game. Search the bookcase to obtain the record necessary to appease the ghosts, run back over and play the song for them. The ghosts will be pleased and begin their dance, giving you the opportunity to slip by and grab the key to the pirate's chest. Run back to the study, place the cavalry saber on the wall, and we open a path towards the hidden corridor underneath the manor. Run forward and a bridge will give out underneath you, blocking you from returning. Keep running, because entering a cave, a giant worm will start to chase you. Outrun the worm and the chicken zombie, only to see that the worm had circled all the way around, so run back the way you came and enter the hole created by the worm, and will enter the depths. This place is a maze. Deep ones infest the waters, so we can't get too close, and there are platforming sections where if you fall from too high up, you will take damage. So, have fun, and navigate your way through this tunnel until you reach this area filled with bridges. Make your way to the treasure chest to obtain a gemstone, and from here we'll find a final letter detailing the truth behind what's going on here. After combining all the notes and information received so far, we figure out that the true villain behind the events of this game was Ezekiel Prest. Ezekiel. He was a pirate who piloted the ship, the Astarte, and he studied the occult. He escaped his hanging and fled to Florida. He lived life for a bit, and then he ended up getting hanged for real, but he survived because of his occult doings, and then he went back to Florida. You know, he's the only person who willingly goes to Florida twice. He found these underground caves and decided to give up on the pirate life. He changed his name to Elia Pickford and he built a manor on the territory, which he named Derceto because his old ship was the Astarte. Pickford tried to offer up some Union soldiers to his rituals, but he got shot 3 times and the soldiers burnt the house down. Normally this would kill someone, but not good old Ezekiel. His slaves rescued him from the flames and then bound his soul to a tree found below the manor, where he now awaited a new body that he could take over. Howard Harwood bought the plantation and fixed it up, only to uncover the truth behind the previous owner, and in an effort to resist being controlled, bit off his own tongue and died. Jeremy then took over the estate, who began to have the same hauntings as Howard did, to which he hanged himself in the attic. And now, in one last effort, Ezekiel is trying to use us, the player, as his new body. Did you get all that? Alright, because it's time to take him down for good. Move forward through a maze with no light that will need the lantern to navigate, find your way through, and place the gem to open the door into what find the man himself, Ezekiel, fused to the tree. We already beat him once as a pirate ghost, so let's do it again. Jump in the water and he'll start shooting fireballs at you. Avoid those while also running past any deep ones that spawn and place an amulet on an altar. He will stop throwing fireballs and now we can begin our counterattack. We have to light the lantern and throw it at him, which will burn him alive. It might seem harsh, but you have to remember, he's died like twice already, so we kinda gotta be thorough here. The building will start to come down on top of you, so we have to make a run for it. Using the hook you obtain, you can open a path back to the cavern and make our way back to the maze. We can use the hook again to open a shortcut, giving us faster access to the basement, and just keep running and we can safely make it out the front doors. We are finally safe from the nightmare that is Derceto Manor. And then whoever you picked, Edward or Emily, will board a cab to drive off somewhere that's hopefully more normal than this. Wait, why is the cab driver a skeleton? Yeah, I don't think that's very normal at all now that I think about it. So, this has been Alone in the Dark. And yeah, it's definitely a video game. I said it before, but if you are already a fan of survival horror games, I'd give it a shot because it's important to see where everything started, and the game isn't bad by any means. For everyone else though, I can't really say. The storytelling having no cutscenes means every bit of history is left in the journals and books, so the average player can easily miss something, especially in the library, and be left clueless as to what's actually happening. And it means boss fights like the Pirate Ghoul and the Vagabond and the final fight against Trezekiel won't make any sense without the build-up. But for people who did read the texts, the build-up towards Ezekiel was probably a lot better, especially when you see continuity like this painting of the Shadow Man, showing that they didn't just throw random flavor text in there. The other thing that surprised me and makes it hard to recommend to anyone outside the survival horror game sphere is that this game is very short. I took my time with the game since I was trying to avoid using a guide, and even with all my deaths and retries, I still beat it in under 7 hours. And the truth is, you can shave a lot off of that time. Many of the rooms don't have any key items inside, and due to how open-ended the game is with exploration, it's entirely possible that a player could gather items long before they become useful, and use them immediately after gathering, or avoid something altogether. You don't need to kill the Vagabond, or break the suit of armor, or clear out the smoking room, or really do most of the game. If you know where all the key items are, and are adept at avoiding the obstacles, you can probably just sprint your way to victory. So ultimately, we end up with a short game that has its fair share amount of weak points, and I personally enjoyed it. I heard the sequels up the scale of the narrative, so any issues that I had will probably be taken care of in the next one, and with the reimagining coming out later this year as well, I feel like maybe this game deserves to be known as more than just the game that inspired Resident Evil, but more like an actual important part of the history of survival horror games. If you like this video, give it a like and feel free to subscribe to come back for the next one. I know my upload schedule is inconsistent, but hey, look, this one took 2 months instead of 5 like the last time. So maybe you'll have the next video in 1 month? Praying for that at least. The current plan is to have it be a Japanese-only game that needs an emulator up and running, but in the event that fails, I have plans B and C to attempt, so if that sounds interesting, stick around, and I will see you on the next one.